The power of not trying, how less effort equals more results. What if I told you that everything you've been taught about effort, ambition, and hard work might be wrong? Not entirely, but dangerously incomplete. That the key to achieving more, understanding deeper truths, and living a more balanced, fulfilled life isn't in grinding harder, pushing further, or maxing out your limits, but in doing something radically counterintuitive, trying less. We're diving headfirst into the philosophy of non-striving, a perspective that rewires the way we approach success, identity, and meaning. This is not laziness, not passivity. It's a concept rooted in ancient wisdom and modern psychology alike. From Lao Tzu's Taoism to Zen monks to 21st century flow science, it's the same shocking principle. There's immense power in letting go. Let's begin with the illusion most of us grow up inside. You work harder, you get more. That's the story. Hustle culture glorifies the grind. Sweat becomes a virtue. We worship the overachiever, the burnout survivor, the all-nighter. We treat struggle as proof of worth. But pause for a second. How often does trying harder actually get in the way? How often do we overthink a problem so much that our mental effort blocks the solution? How often does our need to force success push people or opportunities away? The problem isn't effort itself, it's misapplied effort. And the bigger problem is the identity we attach to effort. We think if we're not struggling, we're not valuable.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
But let's look at nature for a second. An eagle glides with minimal wing movement, conserving energy. A cat waits motionless and then in one smooth motion catches what it's been waiting for. Trees don't try to grow. Water doesn't try to flow. The universe unfolds in complexity, balance, and power, but without strain. Lao Tzu described this concept as Wu Wei, which means effortless action, or non-doing. It doesn't mean doing nothing. It means acting in harmony with the natural rhythm of things. It means not fighting the current, but aligning with it. When you're in Wu Wei, things seem to happen through you, not because of you. It feels like flow. That mysterious state where everything just clicks. We've all felt it. Think about those moments where everything went right, not because you tried so hard, but because you stopped trying so hard. The conversation that flowed when you stopped rehearsing your lines, the solution that emerged when you stepped away from the problem, the inspiration that hit when you finally relaxed. That's not magic, it's psychology. Research on flow states, pioneered by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, shows that peak performance happens not at maximum effort, but in the delicate balance between challenge and surrender. Not too easy, not too hard. You stop micromanaging your mind and your intuition takes over. So why do we resist this idea? Why do we distrust ease? Because effort feels like control. Trying makes us feel like we're in charge. Letting go feels like vulnerability. It means giving up the illusion that we can engineer every outcome, and that scares us. But maybe the real courage is learning to trust the process, not passively, but actively engaging with life from a place of alignment instead of force. The irony is, the more we try to control everything, the more we restrict the very flow that leads to progress. We tense up, We clench our way through experiences that were never meant to be forced. This is where the ancient becomes revolutionary. The Tao Te Ching says, by non-action, everything can be done. That's not a call to be lazy. It's a challenge to rethink how we define action. Do you act from anxiety or do you act from clarity? Are you chasing success to prove something to others, or are you flowing toward your purpose with quiet precision? When you act from alignment instead of insecurity, every move becomes more powerful, especially if it's smaller. Let me ask you something deep. What in your life are you pushing too hard on right now? What are you trying to control that might unfold better if you backed off? Where has your effort turned into resistance? We're not taught to notice this. We're taught that if something isn't working, the answer is more time, more hustle, more pressure. But sometimes the answer is less. Sometimes the wisest move is stepping back, and in that pause you make space for something to come to you. Not because you demanded it, but because you invited it. This is the power of not trying, the paradox of progress, the wisdom of the effortless, the silent strategy, how letting go gets you ahead of the game. Here's where things start to get strange. Strange in the best possible way. The more we step away from the desperate need to succeed, the more success seems to find us. The less we force outcomes, the more naturally things begin to align. Why is that? How can letting go, something that sounds like giving up, actually put you ahead of the game? Because control is a myth. The more tightly we try to grip life, the more it slips through our fingers. When you start trying less, you stop wasting energy on micromanaging what can't be managed. You conserve your mental bandwidth. You become more aware. You notice patterns. You sense subtle shifts in people, in opportunities, in timing. Your decisions become sharper, not because you're forcing them, but because you're finally listening. And that listening gives birth to something rare in today's world: strategic patience. In the modern age, we think of action as constant motion, speed, acceleration. But the silent strategy, the art of letting go, is about rhythm, not rush. It's about knowing that sometimes the strongest move is to pause, to do nothing outwardly while everything aligns inwardly, to let others scramble, compete, chase, while you wait. Not in laziness, but in trust. You're playing a different game, one built on depth, not drama. And because you're not overextended, you see things sooner. You move with precision instead of panic. This is the path of the river, not the hammer. Water flows around obstacles, wears down stone, carves valleys not through brute force, but through time, persistence, and adaptability. You don't always need to crash through the front door when you can slip in through the side. That's what happens when you master the art of relaxed awareness. You begin to flow with reality rather than punching against it. And the people around you, still caught in the illusion that faster is always better, start to burn out while you move forward with grace. Let's take this to the level of influence. Imagine you're trying to convince someone, maybe in a meeting or a relationship or even in a negotiation. If you push too hard, they resist. They feel your desperation. But if you let go, if you speak clearly and then allow silence, something shifts. That space gives them room to come toward you. Because influence isn't about pressure, it's about energy. Trying too hard repels. Confidence without force attracts. When you embody the power of not trying, you give people permission to trust you without feeling cornered. So think for a moment, what are you holding too tightly? What conversation, project, or identity have you been gripping so hard that it's begun to choke your creativity? What might happen if you relaxed your grip, not out of apathy, but out of trust? The Stoics had a phrase for this: amor fati, love of fate. Not passive acceptance, but active embrace. It means I welcome whatever comes because I trust my ability to meet it, and that trust only emerges when you stop needing life to prove something. You begin to see clearly. You let go of attachment to outcomes and focus instead on the quality of your process. You become less reactive, more intentional, less explosive, more enduring. Trying too hard can make you blind. It locks you into narrow thinking, frantic action, and emotional turbulence. Letting go doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care in a smarter way. You focus on what you can do, your preparation, your mindset, your presence, and you release what's out of your hands. And paradoxically, this is what gives you more control, because now your energy is clean, it's undistracted, it's aligned. The silent strategy is not about withdrawing from life, it's about engaging with life on a higher frequency. You're no longer seeking validation, success, or control as compensation for internal chaos. You've already calmed the chaos. And that calm is what makes you magnetic. People feel it. Doors open, paths clear, not because you begged, but because you became. So now ask yourself, where would you be if you stopped chasing and started allowing? How much of your stress, your confusion, your self-doubt comes from trying to make something happen instead of trusting the timing? Because sometimes the most powerful move in the game is no move at all. Effortless excellence. Why doing less makes you better at everything. Here's the moment where the paradox becomes painfully, beautifully clear. When you stop trying so hard to be excellent, you actually become better at everything. Your conversations become more authentic, your decisions become more fluid, your creativity sharper, even your physical presence becomes more relaxed, more grounded. It's like the parts of your life that used to feel heavy and uphill suddenly begin to move with their own rhythm, not because you're doing more, but because you're finally doing less of what doesn't serve you. This is the law of subtraction. True mastery is often not about what you add, but what you remove. Excess tension, overthinking, self-judgment, the pressure to constantly perform. Excellence doesn't come from strain, it comes from alignment. The best athletes in the world don't run with clenched jaws and tight fists. The best musicians don't force every note. The best thinkers don't grip their minds like a vice. They let the energy move through them. They trust their training. They get out of the way. This is where we start to see the difference between effort and ease. Most people conflate the two. They assume that if something feels effortless, it's either lucky or fake. But effortless doesn't mean undisciplined. It means you've integrated your discipline so deeply that it becomes second nature. You've done the work, but you don't cling to it. You let it breathe, like a painter who no longer sketches every line but flows freely with the brush because they've already mastered the fundamentals. Think about your own life. How often are you overcomplicating What's actually simple? How often are you trying to prove something that no one even asked of you? This constant internal strain, we think it's noble. We think it's what high achievers do, but in truth, it creates friction in your relationships, friction in your body, friction in your creativity. And that friction doesn't make you better. It makes you tired, it makes you reactive. It burns you out before you ever reach what you were running toward. Now, consider this. When you move from ease, your mind opens up. You become more perceptive. You start seeing things others don't because they're too consumed with appearing in control. You hear the subtext in conversations. You notice timing. You sense flow. These are the gifts of stillness, of non-striving. And they allow you to respond to life with accuracy, not anxiety. Philosophically, this idea touches the core of every major wisdom tradition. Zen teaches that the mind becomes clear not through effort, but through stillness. Taoism teaches that force creates resistance, but flow creates momentum. Even in modern psychology, the most successful people are often described not as those who try hardest, but those who are most present. And presence isn't something you grind for. It's something you stop resisting. This is the mindset that makes your actions count more. You make fewer moves, but they're powerful. You speak less, but you're heard more. You stop multitasking and start monofocusing, and suddenly, what used to feel like chaos becomes simple, not because the world changed, but because you stopped fighting it. You begin to realize that excellence is quiet. It's focused. It doesn't draw attention to itself. It doesn't need to. That's the difference. When you're truly aligned, when you stop trying to look excellent and start trusting the process of being excellent, results begin to show up in unexpected ways. You get called into rooms you didn't even know existed. People start asking for your insight without you ever promoting yourself. Why? Because ease is magnetic, calm is rare, and people are drawn to those who don't need to perform to prove they belong. Let's bring this down to the real question. What would you do differently if you believed ease could lead to more impact than effort? What would you stop doing today if you trusted that the highest level of performance requires less friction, not more? This isn't theory, this is a way of life. A radical, grounded, proven path that says, you're not behind because you haven't done enough. You're behind because you're doing too much of what disconnects you from your natural rhythm. Excellence is not a frantic state, it's a quiet mastery. And all you have to do is stop trying so hard to reach it. The freedom of flow, how surrender unlocks your deepest potential. We've reached the point where this whole idea flips from surprising to liberating. Everything up until now, the letting go, the stepping back, the moving with less effort, wasn't just a strategy. It was a doorway, a quiet shift that reveals something deeper about the nature of power, success, and human potential, because once you stop forcing life, you start flowing with it. And flow is not a buzzword, it's the most powerful state you can live from. When you stop gripping every outcome, you become available to something far more intelligent than your plans, your full presence. Surrender isn't giving up, it's giving in. To the moment, to the rhythm of life, to the intelligence that unfolds when you stop resisting. You're no longer trying to dominate every conversation, chase every opportunity, or control every narrative. Instead, You trust your preparation, your timing, your instincts, and because you're no longer locked in fear, your movements become cleaner, your words become lighter, your mind becomes sharper. Flow isn't mystical, it's what happens when you stop swimming upstream and allow your inner current to take you somewhere you couldn't have imagined by sheer will alone. Let's be honest, most of our efforts are not really about effectiveness, they're about anxiety. They're attempts to protect ourselves from failure, rejection, or uncertainty. But when you live like that, everything becomes a performance. You lose the ability to be real. You're always on, always managing your image, always calculating. It's exhausting. And ironically, that tension blocks the very creativity, wisdom, and magnetism that makes people great in the first place. Hit flow starts when you drop the mask, when you no longer need to be anything other than what the moment asks for. You respond, not react. You feel, not force. You show up with full awareness, not full control. And that's where the magic happens, where your talents express themselves effortlessly, where conversations feel like music, where success finds you because you've stopped chasing it and started becoming it. And here's the most freeing part of all. When you live from flow, your value isn't tied to outcome anymore. You stop measuring your worth by how fast you progress, how much you achieve, or how others perceive you. Instead, you find your center. You reconnect with your deeper purpose, not as a mission to grind through, but as a rhythm to dance with. Life becomes less about pressure and more about play, less about proving and more about exploring. So now, ask yourself the real question, the one beneath all the productivity hacks, life strategies, and self-improvement tips. What would your life feel like if you stopped performing and started flowing? If you stopped trying so hard to be enough and realized you already are? Who would you be if you let go of the grip and trusted the deeper wisdom moving through you? That's not just philosophy, that's freedom. The kind that makes you lighter, more focused, more aligned, the kind that leads to better results with less effort. Not because you did less, but because you finally became more. This is the power of not trying. The art of surrender, the doorway to flow. And once you walk through it, you realize the goal was never to control everything. It was to feel everything, to trust yourself, and to move through life not like a machine, but like a river. Because when you stop forcing the path, you become it.